María Fernanda Espinosa. It's great to see you.
Wonderful to see you, and especially in this setting,
I
Tony.
mean,
This
this
is
is
unbelievable. Yes,
beautiful, right?
beautiful.
I wanted to tell the viewers, so yesterday we had a chance to do a panel together on UN reform, the UN 80 initiative, and you got a round of applause when you brought up a point about preventive diplomacy. And I know that you've said before, when peacekeepers need to show up, it's already too late. Can you tell a little bit about what that means?
Well, it means that one of the most important job descriptions for the UN is to prevent conflict. And to say prevent conflict is a short phrase, but it means a lot of things. It means building peace, having a very strong and well-equipped intellectually, oversight machinery, to have a scenario building machinery, to have early warning systems in place. The structure of the UN is able to identify potential conflicts and then act to prevent them before they erupt, before they actually happen. And I think that we are leaving the prevention agenda on the side to do the urgent. And the urgent is to respond to the already more than 100 existing armed conflicts and deploy either peacekeeping forces or the humanitarian aid, which the UN also does pretty well. But I think the raison d'être, now that we are, facing the Tour Eiffel here, is precisely to do the preventive work. Part of the preventive work is development, is reducing inequalities, is opportunities and jobs for younger generations, but also making sure that we are able to identify potential red flags. And you need a very potent structure of oversight, of analysis, prospective thinking, and not arrive one day too late.
But of course, that's going to take resources. And one of the big points of UN 80 reform is a certain amount of austerity, doing less with more, cutting funding. Where would those resources come from? How would you reallocate to make prevention a bigger focus?
The truth is that the international context, the consistent decrease of ODA, the consistent decrease in investing in the multilateral machinery, especially in the UN, of course, it has impacts. It really hampers the possibility of an organization to fulfill its mandates. But I think that we are in times of, I don't like the word austerity, but refocus, prioritizing, avoiding overlaps, redundancy, mainstreaming the work of the UN, putting the resources where it really matters, making sure that the programs and agencies do not compete for resources among themselves, but really align their work to the current realities. And of course, the challenge of doing more with less. It's a great management challenge, but also an exercise of setting the priorities right. And I think that we should really make sure that the UN has a new financing compact, new mechanisms to fund the operations of the organization, to be able to deliver the services that the organization was set to deliver. And yet again, if you invest $1 in prevention, you save almost $1,000 in response. And that these are not my numbers; these are the IMF numbers. So I think it's worthwhile. It's really a good investment. Sometimes it's very diffuse, you don't see the immediate gain, but it's really worth doing that, because then the humanitarian responses are very costly. We see also resources disappearing from the humanitarian front. And then it's worth refocusing, prioritizing more accountability and transparency in the use of the funds of the UN, smartest partnerships, bringing in different actors, and preserving the intergovernmental character of the organization and the leadership of member states.
Yeah, so okay, I understand your point, a refocusing of goals. Another major goal that's being discussed here, we're approaching the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. We heard President Macron yesterday here at the Paris Peace Forum talking about that, but obviously this is a troubled time for that agreement. The US has withdrawn, political shifts globally are making it harder to find consensus. Do you think at this point the progress is matching the science?
Not at the speed and at the scale, and at the urgency that we have now. We have looked at the nationally determined contribution submissions. They represent about 30% of the global emissions. A little more than 60 countries have submitted their NDCs out of 198 parties to the convention. We see, yes, of course, we need faster, quicker, and greater ambition in climate action, but not only in the mitigation agenda, in reducing the emissions, but also in the capacity of countries to adapt and to build resilience. And we have a huge financing gap in the climate space, of course, but we see a lot of engagement, lots of political traction in the climate debate. Not only among world leaders and states, but we also see great leadership from mayors and cities and local governments in general. We see increasing engagement of the private sector in the climate space and with climate commitments. We see a mobilized civil society around the climate issue. We need to really close the gap between the science, the pain of people that are suffering at the impacts of climate change, and the investment and the political traction. So all of these have to come together, and we have high hopes for COP30 in Brazil.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about COP30. So we're now just days away from the UN climate conference in Brazil. Obviously, the Caribbean, Latin America, heavily impacted by climate change. To what extent do you think the region can also be a part of the solution?
Well, first of all, unfortunately, Latin America, and including, of course, the Caribbean, is one of the regions that is more fragile and vulnerable to climate shocks. But we don't see the matching investments. If countries have to choose whether to invest in adaptation or education and health, it's very likely that they will invest in education and health because they're more pressing and more urgent and more visible and politically costly if you don't do that. But if there is no enough investment in climate, we cannot even think about the future of development. We cannot even think about competitiveness and the much needed industrialization in Latin America. But Latin America has had a very prominent role in the climate space globally. We have to remember that Argentina hosted 2 COPs already. Mexico and Peru have hosted COPs. There is a lot of conversation in the region because we are highly vulnerable. And if you look at the Caribbean, they're not only victims, we are experiencing right now a major climate shock that is hurting the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Cuba, and they experience that, very often, and each time it's more frequent. So they know that the future of their own existence, of their economies, of their well-being depends on their ability to adapt, to be more resilient to climate shock. So this we see the climate COP in Belém being an Amazonian COP for the 9 Amazonian countries, but we also see this as a COP for Latin America under the great leadership of President Lula.
Yeah, and I should point out, as we all know, Latin America is not a political monolith, and there are shifts happening within Latin American countries. We're seeing a move to the right in places like Bolivia, El Salvador, Argentina with a libertarian president, even in your country of Ecuador. To what extent do you think that political shift will impact Latin America's role in multilateralism?
Well, I think that the difference when we speak about issues such as the ozone layer that we see as a major victory of the multilateral system, the issue of climate is that it's not an environmental issue, it's an economic issue, it's an infrastructure issue, it's an energy security issue, no? And it's a survival issue, it's a food security issue. And that's why it's so difficult to act throughout the climate-related chain. And I think that goes beyond any political alignment. I think that the climate agenda it's closely connected with the future of development, with the well-being of the Latin American and Caribbean citizens. It is connected also with the rights of future generations to live in safer environments. If we are serious about um, reducing the amounts of people migrating, human mobility, more and more is connected to climate impacts and shocks. So if we want an organized human mobility, if we want development that will keep people in the countries of origin, if you want to combat organized crime and drug trafficking, you need to act on climate. There is no question about that. And that, again, goes beyond any political alignment. Latin America and the Caribbean has never been a monolithic region. And there are issues that really need to bring the leaders of Latin America and the Caribbean together. Climate is one. The security challenges are something else, something additional. And also the issue of tackling inequalities, which is one of the most pressing and complex issues that the region has to go through.
Yes, and speaking of inequality, you have devoted a large part of your career to working on gender issues, not just gender equality, but making sure that women have a seat at the table in leadership roles. We are right now facing 2026 when a new UN Secretary General will be selected. There is a movement, Madam Secretary, right, for it to finally be, after 80 years, a woman. I'm assuming you agree that it should be. Why?
Well, I would say it's an issue not only of historical justice. I think after 80 years of history, the organization deserves to have a woman at the helm. And it's not only also a matter of demographic justice, because we happen to be more than half of the world's population. I think if the UN really wants to be transformed, there is a shift in styles of leadership that is needed. And the question I ask is, why not a woman? And I think the answer, it's very difficult to say, why not a woman? And there's so many out there that fit the profile, that are well equipped to really lead an organization that is in so much need of refreshment, of being modernized, of being more effective, more efficient, more accountable, and respond more to the people in need and the people the organization serves. One of the most beautiful phrases of the UN Charter is "We the peoples of the United Nations." That's the first phrase. So the UN has to get its act together and go back to serve with the peoples. So we have a deep bench of opportunities, and we should take this historic opportunity to having a woman.
Are you going to run?
Well, we have two formal candidates, great women.
Yes, Michelle Bachelet
and Rebecca Greenspan.
And Rebecca Greenspan.
Tell me, we cannot have better.
Two powerhouse women from Latin America. What would it mean to you to have a Latin American woman at the helm of the UN?
Well, that would be wonderful because usually there is regional rotation, and why not also to have an incredible woman from Latin America to lead the organization in times of hardship. So we are not naive. The organization needs a major overhaul.
María Fernanda Espinosa, thanks so much for coming by.
Well, thanks to you, Tony.